that you do at PRODCUT?
So PRODCUT is a really small company, about 20 people. And what we do is we are talking with the customers, looking what you need to do. So for example, there's like some factory that needs to optimize one of their lines or optimize one of their opportunities or optimize their work. So we propose a product for them. So ways to solve their problem with electronics, software, and hardware.
All right. So you combine the three of them: software, hardware, and electronics.
And mechanics too.
And mechanics, okay. And you go from basically an idea all the way to, production, going through prototyping, testing, MVP. So you do the whole.
Exactly.
thing.
We don't do the production ourselves, but we do the production management.
Yeah.
So we help them to find production places where the factories. Sometimes we are organizing them after or like organizing the production after the development phase. Sometimes we hand it over to clients. But the most important thing is like we help the client products evolve. So for example, I already talked about industrial design, but we also do one of our core business also helping startups. So we do a lot of unmanned aerial vehicles, so like small planes. We have developed a lot of electronics and software and hardware for them, and also same for the unmanned ground vehicles. So for example, I would say two prominent names what I've done so far is the Starship, which is the package robot, and Triad, which does military drones.
So this leads me to this, the other part. What's your background? What got you into this?
So I would say everything started when I was around 14. Somehow I used to be debating a lot. So I met a bunch of interesting people in the international debating, I think it was summer event, World Championships. And what happened, I met one guy from the US whose father was a theoretical physics teacher and scientist. His brother was doing a satellite development, and himself, he was a black sheep of the family and developed and was doing them kind of soft sciences, such as I think he was studying philosophy or something like that.
Okay.
But he taught me what his brothers and fathers doing, and so that was the first time I got really into the electronics and satellite stuff.
Okay.
And after that, I started reading books about satellites, building satellites, and when I was like 18, I pretty much had two options: either to go to MIT or go to the Tartu University and join with Estonian first satellite program.
Okay.
I didn't get to the MIT, so I took the next step and went to the joined the Estonian first satellite team and actually built a joint team for the next 5 years when we built Estonian first satellites, which was actually successful.
It was all over the news.
It was all over the news in Estonia.
And how old were you?
I was 19.
19, all right.
And from there on, I got that I was studying the physics in the same time. Okay. But for me, I always think of physics as a tool, which you need to know how the electronics, everything works. But what I love is the electronics, software, and hardware, which actually you can do something practical about. Okay. So that's how I got into the engineering and more especially into engineering of the satellites, all the interesting systems.
Okay. After that, you told me you joined the European Space Agency. You supported them in their program here in Estonia.
That's true. So actually, I joined because we started the Estonian space program at the same time we started the SQ1. So somewhere middle way, I joined one project, which was we're building a European student moon orbiter. This project never went to live, but that was the first time I got actually contact with a lot of ESA people.
Okay.
And from that point on, we kind of started collaborating with ESA, and I think like a few years ago in 2017 or 18, Estonia finally joined ESA as a full membership. So from the starting point of the SQ1, which was the Estonia first satellite project, within 10 years with a lot of support, but we generated through the SQ1 team, we managed to convince the Estonian public and politicians to join ESA, that it will be beneficial for Estonian companies.
Okay. And in the meantime, you started your startup that's been ongoing for 5 years.
Yep.
Right? And you said that's a very expensive hobby. So what is it with this vacuum camera?
So everything started.
Just to mention, it's not a vacuum.
It's not a vacuum. It's not a vacuum. We're not putting cameras in your vacuum cleaners.
And we're not competing with Dyson.
Yes. Well, what happened is that in 2014, pretty much after the launch of SQ1, me and a few friends were thinking like, we would like to continue building satellites, but we would not like to do it with student or university programs.
Okay.
We want to find out if it's possible to build a commercial company in Estonia and doing like space business. In the beginning, we're like, how hard can it be? And after half a year, we heard stories that if you want to build your space company, it will take you 10 years and 10 million. We're like, hey, we're going to do it less cheaper. We can definitely do it like shorter times period.
Well, you're halfway through.
We're halfway through now, and it started to get profitable.
Okay.
So, but actually, like 10 million, 10 years is quite an accurate estimate because there's so much certification and background checks, and like you need have a really strong background to actually bring a space company. So what we did, we were able to make a satellite camera for a small satellite, and what we thought like which technology was first developed during the SQ1, but we thought like this is an amazing piece of IP and technology. We would like to develop it further to actually put it on multiple satellites because we saw the hole in the market. There was nothing that, and after we have developed this space camera, we found out like, hey, maybe there are ways we can use it on ground because the space market it's still pretty small. It's a niche market. There are maximum like 100 cameras we can sell in a year.
Yeah.
But when we thought about the vacuum chambers cameras, all of the investors were talking in the beginning. It's all like you need a bigger market. Yeah. So we're finding like ways how to innovate, like find ways to innovate. Where can we bring this amazing camera where all of these features are recognized? And that's how we found the market of vacuum chambers that we've been developing together with European Space Agency. So. Okay. Well, what happened is like we were talking about and finding ideas, and we talk at the same time talking with our ESA friends and the partners that we have generated over the multiple years, and we found like this vacuum chamber camera is really interesting for multiple parties, and thus that's why we started to do spin off from this our satellite camera with the minimal changes. We were able to create a vacuum chamber camera.
Okay. So you learned all along the way. I mean, you had an idea, and you have a technical background, but along the way you started seeing, okay, how can I fit this into the market, and how can I get a bigger market? So these are some of the things that you learn, and you mentioned relationships, which is something very important. This is why you're halfway through. Yeah. Your 10 years plan.
So I think that like the most things I have learned on the road here, it's like you always have to value people, even if the people like the persons you talk with are not really knowledgeable about a specific area. You still can catch a lot of, if there's interesting people, they can give you actually quite a reasonable kind of feedback. So you always have to find different feedback and find out what's suitable in your case. Right. So that's the first thing. You always have to find people, amazing people around you can do the work together. At the same time, you always have to, I would say, what you have to think about, if it's like 5 to 10 years development time or a company time that it takes to build up your company, you need to have reliable partners. Yeah. It's longer time than I would say average marriage time in Europe these days. So it's like people you can trust and you can go with all the hard times and easier times. Yeah. So I have found like having good partners and people you can count on is also a really important thing.
It's like marriage, basically.
It's pretty much is. Yeah. You call each other quite often, and you go on the trips together quite often. I would say those are the core things. The third thing is you always have to be innovative, trying to find ways how to solve problems. So somebody is always throwing some problems on your way. You're thinking like, hey, if I do those things, I'm gonna be amazing. No, you're gonna after you solve those, two problems and you get over to those two hills, you're gonna see more hills.
Yeah.
It's like if you go to camping in Italy or hiking. After this hill, there's definitely another hill.
Yeah, the good thing is that you should stick to your goal. No, because you know where your vision is. You believe in what you're doing, but you're also listening to what's happening. Because if it's just one or the other, you might end up changing so many ways if you listen to everyone. Because it's easier to give feedback, so things to bear in mind, than destroying it. So if it's constructive feedback, you listen to it, but you stick to your goal because you know what you're doing. This is where you get to something, and you're very patient. So it's been 5 years. You have 5 more years to go, but in the meantime, you're doing so many amazing things with Crackle, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I would say it's like keeping your way, same time changing a little bit, but then sometimes you always have to find like this is the dead end. Let's finish it here. Let's find another path.
Yeah.
So it's like finding the path and like listening, trying to. On this, all of the information, finding the correct answers. That's always the tough part.
Yeah, it's a process. Yeah. It's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're gonna look at the camera and edit us. So
okay.
All right. Okay. What's your company's name here?
We're not gonna say hello.